Hi, I'm Heather from booktubes, and today is a very exciting collab, and is how I find books or how I add books to my TBR. And this is something that I have been asked quite a few times over the years. Sometimes I feel like it's very genuine and people are just wondering where I find these books, because I do think a lot of people come to me for kind of underrated gems. And then sometimes I think it's a little bit shady. It almost feels a little combative or antagonistic when people DM or comment me this, but I try to always answer it in good faith. And the answer is always just, I spend a lot of time on the bookish internet, truth be told. First of all, I have been trying to find books through the bookish internet for the last 7 years. And in that time, obviously, I've really curated who I follow, and I also have all these years of recording what books I'm reading on Goodreads. So that means that, it's easier to find similar ones or to have similar books and authors recommended to me. I also have 7 years of a Kindle history at this point. And like I said, I spend a lot of time watching BookTube, and all of my social media accounts are bookish. So if I'm spending time on Twitter, I'm also seeing book stuff on Twitter. If I'm spending time on Instagram, it's all book stuff. Even TikTok, I'm likely to get quite a bit of book stuff on there. So the answer is I spend a lot of time consuming book content, truth be told.
Hi, I am editing and I thought of some numbers that I should definitely include here, since the whole point is where do I find my books. And there's a lot of numbers at the end of this video, so I wanted to go ahead and insert it here. The platforms where I found the books that went on my TBR, I got 10 from Instagram, 4 from YouTube, 5 from TikTok, 15 from Goodreads, 1 from NetGalley, and 4 from Amazon/Kindle. Of the books that I added, 10 were from authors, either their own books or other books. 10 were from reviewers, 2 were specific to me recommendations, and 20 were found by me looking for books to add to my TBR.
So the idea was that we would do a collab so that you could see how more than one person adds books to their TBR, and it would be for the month of May. I have kept a record of every book that I added to my TBR in May, what happened to it, and then if it's still on my TBR and I have not read the author before, I did do a try chapter for it. But we've got a lot of the books to talk about. This is a collab with Izzy at Happy For Now, and quite frankly, it would not have happened without her and her kind of being like, no, this is a good idea, and forcing me to think about it more and think of a way that I would like to do this video. So it wouldn't have happened without her. And her members, shout out to Izzy's members. But it's also a collab with Shay at Shay Geeks Out, Robin at Paperbacks and Planners, Steph at Novelty Corner, and Megan at Meowth Vader. She did threaten to post a video, and I for one hope she follows through. And of course, I must give a shout out to May, who is also in the group chat and just didn't make a video but wanted to be included. We love May. We love both Megans, whether they post or not. Which I think is really interesting because I get a lot of recommendations from this group of people and vice versa. We have a lot of overlap. Surprisingly enough, I think I barely added to my TBR from this group this month, but this is just organically what got added to my TBR in May. I didn't do anything on purpose for this video. I just let it be. And I know that we all kind of filmed this differently and did different things, so I'm really excited to see what theirs looks like. So, starting on May 2nd, I was watching Sarah at Sarah Evermotion's Books here on BookTube, and they had reviewed The Never List by Jade Presley and described it as a light, easy why choose, and basically, the guys are really nice to her, and I was immediately intrigued by that because I don't love when they're like super mean to her for no reason. All right, the Never list, she is trying to cross into the border to get into the choosing for these princes. They all will have the same fated mate. They've tried like 5 times and she's always died. She's not supposed to be in the choosing because she's the lowest caste. She's trying to sneak into it and she's caught by a guard who has been coercing her into sex. She had initially, gone into it consensually, but he's using his power to throw her into prison to coerce her. So that's the first chapter, so beware of that. She's going to end up being the fated mate of the princes, and also she's hiding her powers.
Also, that chapter gets a 3.
Then on May 3rd, I was scrolling Instagram and Kath Richards, who is the author of A Love Most Fatal, which is my favorite current mafia romance. She did an Instagram story about the release of The Princess and the Pack, which is Rebellious Royals Omegaverse #1 by Fallon English. And this is another light wide choose. I did end up reading this later on in the month. Also on May 3rd, I was scrolling Instagram and Talk About Spoon shared the release date of Scrum by Ava Tenney, which is a romantic suspense that I thought was a dark romance because it said it was a dark romance, but it's not. I did end up reading this in May. And then I added the next release to my anticipated releases, which I believe is supposed to follow another player on the wife's rugby team, although we didn't meet any of the rugby team in the novella. That is supposed to release later this year, so I am willing to read that. On May 4th, Vi commented on a Romantasy Project introduction with a recent favorite of theirs, which is Of Thorns and Beauty, Twisted Pages #1 by Elle Madison. And this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling fantasy romance. Of Thorns and Beauty, the beginning of the synopsis and the beginning of the book are the same quote, and this quote immediately piqued my interest, and that is, "You think you know the tale as old as time, but you've already got it wrong. There never was a beauty and a beast, only a girl who was both. And that girl was me." Dun, 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 dun. So first chapter, she's on her way into a forced marriage with a Viking king / a beastly king. And I got the impression, because her bridal outfit is red and she has jewelry from her nose to her ear, that perhaps this is an Indian style of her country of origin. But basically she is from an abusive situation and she needs to cooperate with her new husband, or her sisters back will be punished for it. And she is owned by a madam, and it appears to allude to past sexual assault, and there's definitely a guy there that is a sadist and is a rapist and stuff, but it seems like he was not allowed access to her specifically, but it does seem like she was already a victim of someone else, and she doesn't understand why she's the one going into this arranged marriage with the king, because she's just like middle nobility, and she's worried that the reason is so he can get away with doing whatever he wants to her. I would give that between a 3 and a 4. The synopsis and this intrigues me more. The first chapter, is her riding in the carriage with the sadist, so it's uncomfortable. Then on May 8th, either that day or the day before, I deleted a bunch of things from my TBR, and I was looking at favorite books on Goodreads and the books readers also enjoyed, and I had already have a sci-fi romance by this author on my TBR, which I actually also read in May. Saw this prequel novella and loved the synopsis. Immediately had the urge to pick it up, so I read it that day and right away. The Rising Wave by Michelle Diener. Specifically, the title of The Turncoat King was a big factor in the appeal, and I started reading through the series, and I read the prequel novella and books 1 and 2. If you do get book 1 on Kindle Unlimited, the prequel novella is already at the beginning of that book, so you don't necessarily have to check them out separately. And then I actually started Fate's Arrow, which is book number 3, and then pivoted to something else. So that is currently on my TBR. Then on May 9th, I saw a Instagram reel by the author Rachel Moore about a release in 2026 called Safari Murder Party, and it just sounded really fun. I loved the synopsis, and so I added it to anticipated releases. Then on May 11th, Lady Marie released Sweet Control, which is sugared and spice number 4 on Amazon. So I downloaded it on Kindle Unlimited and added it on Goodreads. Now, I did since delete this, don't come for me. The thing is, this is actually the first book of Lady Marie's that I haven't read, but it is not a set of tropes that really interest me. This is another sugar baby book, the whole series is, but this one is age gap and or dad's best friend, something like that. And also she's dominant and he's submissive. All of those things don't really interest me, so I think that I would give this steamy novella a 3 stars if I read it and I decide I actually don't need to do that. I can just wait until she releases something that's a little more specifically my taste. On May 12th, I went to the recently added sci-fi and fantasy tab on NetGalley and saw Galaxy Grifter by A. Zakova. The synopsis sounded so good, and so I added it to anticipated releases and requested it, even though I never heard of it, which goes against my NetGalley rules, and I got approved and I DNF'd it. I didn't like the writing at all. Also on the 12th, Elena, a graphic novel adaptation, Song of the Lioness by Tamora Pierce, was released, and my library did end up getting a copy, and so I added it. I will be reading this to my kids. This is a graphic novel adaptation of one of my absolute top tier childhood favorite fantasies. Cannot recommend enough. Obviously, Tamora Pierce is a pillar of young adult fantasy, but yeah, I can't recommend it enough, but I haven't got to it yet. On May 13th, I was watching BookTube, and Beautifully Bookish Bethany posted a standalone video review for Silver Elite by Danny Francis, and it was a nice short video. Her saying it would be like the next Fourth Wing intrigued me, so I immediately put it on hold at the library, and it is still sitting on hold and has quite the hold weight. And I know there's a lot of controversy about this, but I haven't seen anything that made me care. To be completely honest with you, I know people don't like that it's a random pen name, but I think that pen names are one of those things where I don't care if someone abuses it, because the principle of allowing pen names to be anonymous is so important for so many people that I don't care if someone that maybe I wouldn't read if I knew their real name uses that and I read them. Like, not knowing their identity is not a reason for me not to read a book. All right, I got the sample and read the first chapter of Silver Elite, and it's very popcorn writing. It's not great. It is the type of thing that I think that I will like. We definitely meet the love interest in the first chapter. We get the action going down in the first chapter. She hooks up with someone else. Yeah, I think that I'm gonna like this. I definitely think I'm going to read it when my library hold comes in. This is dystopian, and she, I think, makes the mistake in the first chapter. She's basically too good of a shot, and she's going to be forced to train for the military in an elite unit, you know, going against the resistance for people like her. He's gonna be her commanding officer. So far so good. I see the appeal. I'd give that like a 4. That same day, Kindle recommendations did Trader's Son, which is Empire of the Stars #1 by Melissa J. Cave. The cover caught my attention, and so I read the synopsis and was intrigued, added it. Okay, I read the prologue of Trader's Son, and he is the son of traders, and at 17 he's already survived 5 years of war and also lots of assassination attempts, and he has defeated the enemies so thoroughly that the emperor is forced to knight him. He can't ignore his accomplishments, but his reward is a campaign that is definitely going to kill him, right? That's the prologue, and he says, what will you give me if I do this campaign? Again, he's obviously going to die.
And the emperor says, anything you want. And he says, the Andalin for my duchy, the words came to him like a prophecy, the breed for my own, and your daughter for my wife. Then 7 years later, this is in chapter 1, I think, but then 7 years later, he's survived this campaign, he gets the duchy, and he's going to be wed to the illegitimate daughter who has always been in exile of the emperor, and, you know, she had nothing to do with this and doesn't have any love for the emperor or anything, and they're going to live happily ever after. I hope. I'm not really sure that this is like really true romantasy or anything. It could just be fantasy with a romance. Maybe I'll read reviews for the end, but like it should definitely have an HTA, right? Yeah. I would give that a 4. The quote there at the end of the prologue definitely intrigued my interest, and the synopsis made me excited about it.
Also on that same day, I was scrolling TikTok because I was in a reading slump, and I saw Tama at Shades and Pages. She posted a TikTok of I Fucked Somebody's Wife by Bonet Paris, and I did end up reading this, I think, that day. And then when I added that to Amazon, under that was The Pack by Sarah Fields, which is a dark non-cotton wide shoes with shifters, and I DNF'd that right away. Then on May 15th, Natalia responded to my Instagram story, and they suggested that I read Grow Something, which is Equilibrium 2.5 by Christina C. Jones, and is a novella. I haven't read anything in the series, I don't think, but I don't currently have anything by Christina C. Jones on my TBR, and I don't want to read all of her backlist, so I'm just kind of bouncing around, and so it just depends kind of on when someone recommends it one to me. That same day, Sarah, who we mentioned at the beginning, Sarah of Emotions Books, shared the cover reveal of Enchanting the Fey Queen, which is Queens of Villainy #2 by Stephanie Burgess. I read the first book and really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the second. I didn't know that there had been a cover or a title reveal, and so I added it to Goodreads as soon as I knew that. It will not be coming out until early 2026 though. Then I was in a reading slump, story of May, and I was on Instagram and I saw Kristen Ashley posting reels about her books, and I was like, let me reread, actually is what I thought. Let me go reread a Kristen Ashley, and then I ended up not choosing one in the Colorado Mountain series. Instead, I went to the Berg series, and I saw, you know, I have not finished all of those, and so I got The Promise, which is the Berg #5 by Kristen Ashley, and read it right away. And then on May 17th, I added the next book in the Berg series, which is Hold On by Kristen Ashley. So that is currently sitting on my TBR. Then on May 18th, I was scrolling Instagram stories and Books to Soothe the Soul posted a review for Rules for Ruin, the Crinoline Academy #1 by Mimi Matthews, and it intrigued me and I added it. My library hold for Rules for Ruin by Mimi Matthews just came in, and I read the prologue. I'm giving it a 3. This is a historical romance where she and other girls were specifically trained at this academy to kind of do subterfuge and hopefully undermine men and help women get rights and things like that. And she will specifically have her freedom if she's able to completely ruin this lord and find evidence so he's no longer accepted in society. But the love interest needs this lord to kind of look the other way on his illegal activities, and so they're going to actively go against each other. The writing was fine. The prologue felt very long. Yeah,
We're in the middle right now.
Then Sinful King, which is Mafia Misfits number 7 by Asia Monique, was added to Goodreads because it was releasing the next day, and so I added it. However, I was talking to Ray at Bookmark Chronicles and she wasn't really enjoying this book, which means I might enjoy it more because a couple of her favorites I didn't like as much. But I was talking to her on a live that we did, and I actually looked at the series and realized I've given like the last 3 books 3 stars, and it really made me not want to pick it up. And since Ray wasn't enjoying it all that much anyways, I deleted it. And on May 20th, I was watching Izzy's Mafia Triad chapter and was intrigued by The Devil I Don't Know by L.K. Sean, because it's like stolen from the wedding type thing. Or not really, it was more like forced wedding. But I DNF'd it. Then on May 21st, I was watching TikTok. Why, folks? Because I was in a reading slump, and I saw a TikTok by the author of the book, Beg the Night, Mystics of Ashura number 1 by Emily Blackwood. This is dungeons, forced mating with the scariest man, and must have consent for the magic to work. I actually read a decent amount of this one, but I did DNF it. And on May 22nd, I was watching TikTok because I was still in a reading slump. And I saw a TikTok by Casey Gets Booked, and it was a review of Broken Souls and Bones, number 1 by L.J. Andrews, and is a Viking fantasy romance, and that intrigued me.
Okay, the other library hold that came in was Broken Souls and Bones by L.J. Andrews. This is a Viking-esque fantasy romance, and I read the prologue. Prologue is her being captured as a small child because of her silver eyes that signals her magic or curse. And then she's going to end up being found by this guy, the Prince's Silent Guard, and she's going to be forced to become the crown's next melder. And they have a lot of power and they're feared, but it is a slow death sentence, so she's determined to escape. And it turns out that he is everything she needs to do that, so they're actually going to be on the same side in some way. I would give the prologue a 4. I liked the writing, but yeah, it was the past, and it was basically someone doing magic so she would not remember who she was.
Then on May 23rd, I was on Instagram and I saw a story by Rebecca Witherspoon of someone else reading A Man for Mrs. Claus, and I had seen this when it came out back in December, but it wasn't at my library or on Kindle Unlimited, and I didn't want to buy it, so I went and checked, and it is at my library now, so it got added to my holiday TBR, and I will read it in December, hopefully. Then on May 25th, I was on TikTok. Here's the thing, if I'm reading, I don't touch TikTok. If I'm reading, that's what I'm doing. If I'm not reading, oh, I'm scrolling. I'm scrolling every app I own. May 25th, I was on TikTok and I saw this quote that I've seen a bunch of times for Wreck and Ruin by Emma Slate. And I DNF'd this. I tried to make it through. I really did. I was desperate. I DNF'd it. Again, TikTok by the author for Luna by Carrie Claire. This is a Vampire White Shoes, and I DNF'd it. Then on May 29th, back on the 24th, I had gotten an email from 1001 Dark Nights with the cover and blurb reveal for Finding the One, which is River Ring number 7 by Kristen Ashley. I signed up for the ARC. I hope I get it. And then a few days later, I saw it on Amazon, and so I knew that it was public info, so I went to Goodreads and it was there. So I added it to my anticipated releases. This is coming out, I think, in September, and I'll read it on release day if I don't get the ARC. Same day, I read book 1 of the series, and I DNF'd 8 books that day. And these books were short, so immediately downloaded and read book 2. Chasing Earth, which is Saving Ascara number 2 by Jane Link. Classic case of the mood amidst the time of day, not the book. Like, these books were not really worth reading if my reading was going better, but because of how my reading was going and I was not ready to go to sleep yet and I did not want to go back to scrolling, I wanted to read, I immediately got book 2 and read it.
Then on May 30th, the day before when I was DNFing all those books, I was panicking about my dwindling TBR. And so I did what I often do in this specific mood, and I found a book I love. I went under it to see what else was there, what list it was included on, and scrolled reading the synopses and reviews for anything that interested me, and added a bunch of things. First of all, I just DNF'd I Think I'm in Love with an Alien by Anna Guire, and I had also read Strange Love by this author that had been on my TBR since I read their Perdition trilogy. And so since both of those were off of my TBR, I could add another book by this author to my TBR, and I knew I wanted to add the first book in Sarantha Jack's, which is Grimspace. So when I saw it on the list, I immediately added it because Perdition is a spinoff of this series, and that is my favorite books that I've read by this author. I'm hoping that this series will be another hit for me. Although I don't expect to like it as much as Perdition, because Perdition is a prison ship where there are no guards or anything. It's just the strongest convicts rule. And that survival of the fittest and might makes right type of free-for-all is a trope that particularly interests me. So it was this author writing exactly what I like. So of course I really liked it. So I have a little bit lower expectations for this series than that initial trilogy that I absolutely loved. But I am hoping that I like it more than their just alien romances that I have read recently. I also on that list saw Thanemonger, which is The Ladyship's #1 by Bex McLinn. Thanemonger was surprisingly good first chapter. So she was posing as a sex bot. She's a kidnapped human from Earth and she needs to get back to her son. In what could be a very weird and icky scenario, she was actually purchased by the teenage son of the guy that's going to be the love interest, and the guy is there to get his son, which another guy had reassigned to try and get to him. But so the teenager knows that she's not a sex bot. She slapped him straight. All of that happened off page, right? So none of that is happening on page, which is good. So the first chapter is her being scared to go back in a crypto box, and this gentle teenager trying to talk her into it and telling her she's gonna be safe, and if anybody opens the box besides him, attack them, right? And then the teenager and the crypto bin are getting off the ship and going to his dad, who's like his adopted dad and stuff, and like the head of his house, and you know, he's a very prominent general and stuff. And the captain of the ship is like, no, he didn't come on board with that, we need to inspect it. And then the guy's uncle is like, it's just a sex bot, I bought it for him. And they're like, it doesn't matter, you can't do your inspection until we see the box. They're getting ready to open the box when chapter 1 ends. So I don't know. He's, you know, doing stuff for his son. She's trying to get back to her Earth for her child, which like wasn't an appealing synopsis or setup necessarily, but I really liked the writing, and I liked the way that she wrote the teenager, and like the interaction between the human and the teenager felt very realistic to me, felt very sweet. So yeah, I'm curious about this one. I'd give it like a 4 or a 5 probably. The Last Hour of Gone by Lear Smith, which I am 99% sure I had already deleted literally in May. Somebody said something and I saw it again and was like, okay. The first chapter of The Last Hour of Gone or whatever is an hour and a half. So I read a couple pages and I'm just immediately doping out of this. I don't like it. Somebody died and they're waiting to cremate them, and
there's population control, and I don't like it. I don't want to read 700 pages of this.
Night Chaser, which is Endeavor #1 by Amanda Boucher. I have read their romantasy series years ago, at least the initial trilogy or whatever, and really liked it. Although I do remember wishing that there was a little bit more romance. Also added Venomous, which is Alien Warrior #1 by Penelope Fletcher. I have definitely seen this book and synopsis before and thought about adding it, but never did, and I did end up DNFing that. Then I added Eden by Louise Wise, and I DNF'd it. That's right. We are almost done here. I also, from that list, added Mercenary Instinct, which is Mandrake Company #1 by Ruby Lionstreet.
Hi.
Hi, 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 hi.
The other kid also said hi. So I just read the first chapter of Mercenary Instinct, and it's like a 3. I don't really want to read it, but then I read the synopsis again and I was like, I kind of do, because he's a mercenary and she has a bounty on her head and she doesn't have any idea why she has a bounty on her head. So obviously there's something fishy there. So he captures her in the first chapter, her and her 2 other women crew. One is a barely 20-year-old pilot and the other is a scientist of some sort, and they were on a scientific expedition. But then because he has her captured, she keeps like conning his crew into helping her and stuff, and that appeals to me. I'm not sure. It was a pretty long first chapter too. Then I added The Melior Woman of Dornai #1 by Poppy Rise, and I DNF'd that. I added Breeder #1 by Kara Bristol, and I DNF'd that. And then on May 31st, I was looking for more books to read because I wasn't really feeling the urge to pick anything up that I saw. And so I went to Mindy Lou's book reviews on Goodreads. This is someone that I've followed for a very long time, and we have a lot of books in common. I was going through their Protective Alphas shelf on Goodreads, and I added Shudder Speed by Friend Barker. I DNF'd this right away, but it was because the uncle of the main character was taking care of her aunt who had Alzheimer's, so it wasn't the writing or the story, it was that specific trigger. As soon as I read that was happening in like the prologue, I DNF'd it and marked it as DNF, so I won't accidentally try and read it again, right? And then I also added Love Like Poison by Charmaine Pauls. Mindy had actually reviewed a different book by this author that really intrigued me, but it was on Kindle Unlimited, it wasn't at the library, and the bind up of this series was on Kindle Unlimited, so I went ahead and added it. Love Like Poison is getting a 2 from me. First chapter is her 16th birthday, he's 20, they're arranged to be married, but she doesn't know it. The ending of this book ends on a brutal cliffhanger according to reviews, and the content warnings honestly scare me. So this is a no. And that is all of the books that I added to my TBR in May. Okay, I have done a lot of counting, a lot of mathing for you people, and I think you're gonna be interested in the results. I wish that I kept track exactly of how many books were on my TBR before May started, between my want to read shelf, my fantasy TBR, anticipated releases, all of the things, but I didn't. However, I can tell you a few things, right? First of all, total in May, I added 42 books to my TBR. I DNF'd 11 of those 42. That's 31. I deleted 2 of them without DNFing them. That's 29. I read 8 of them, and that leaves 21 books that got added to the TBR without me touching them in the calendar month of May. Okay, so May to May,
gain of 21 of these specific books, right? However, for the try a chapter, I tried 10 and I am going to get rid of 3.
I think we will all benefit from me refilming some of this math, so you're welcome. After the try chapter, that leaves 11 books. Of those 11 books, 4 are anticipated releases, so I can't access them yet. They're not out. And 1 is a holiday book, which I won't read until December. And that leaves 6 books that I didn't do anything with. They are all repeat authors because all of the new authors I did in the try chapter. So if you add together those 6 books, the 7 that I'm keeping from the try chapter, the anticipated releases and the holiday, I have 18 books on my TBR right now that I did not have on it at the beginning of May. There are 18 new books currently living on my TBR. But in May, I added a total of 42, right? I read already enough, 32, and I deleted an unknown handful, but definitely a few. So right now, right this second, all of my TBR and currently reading shelves on Goodreads added together, I have a total TBR of 83 books, which I think is actually smaller than it was at the beginning of May. So I am pretty sure 1 month later, despite adding 42 books, my total TBR is actually smaller than it was at the beginning. And even if that's not true, I think that we are within a range of about 5 books either way. And I think that that is pretty standard for me. I think my TBR is always kind of living in the same range, because if it's not, I feel overwhelmed and start deleting things. So that's that.
My TBR doesn't fluctuate a whole lot, but I think you might not realize just how many are coming in and how many I am doing something with, whether it's literally just deleting them off of the TBR or DNFing them or reading them. Like, it's a high volume shuffling game, basically. I don't know, I hope that this was interesting, but this is really fun. This is where I get my books from. This is how many books I add in a month and kind of what happens to them. As you can see, not a lot just kind of are hanging out on the TBR. Most of them got touched in some way. Thanks so much for watching. Please do watch the other collab videos, and if you are interested in doing a video like this, I would love to watch it. Please make sure to tag me, because we like to give credit. Because we like to give credit, but also I would like to watch it if I remember. I'm actually not the greatest at watching videos I'm tagged in, so I do apologize to anyone that is like, I tagged you and you didn't show up. That could be true. That could be true. But yeah, this is a fun idea. Thank you so much to everyone who inspired it in one way or another. And I am not looking forward to editing this. Okay, bye.